Thank you all so much for joining us for Connecting Democracies Globally. I'm Vanessa Hope, Director of Invisible Nation, and I'm honored to be moderating this timely conversation. Our film follows Taiwan's first female president, Tsai Ing-wen, during some of the most consequential years in the country's modern history, a period that forces us all to confront what it truly takes to protect freedom, sovereignty, and the future of democratic life. Today's discussion is rooted in a simple but urgent idea. Democracies are stronger when they work together. Across continents, we see authoritarian regimes learning from one another, sharing playbooks and strategies. If autocracies are building alliances, then democracies, governments, NGOs, grassroots organizers, and global citizens must build deeper alliances of their own. We have an extraordinary group with us, each working on the front lines of democratic resilience and international collaboration. Enoch Wu, Executive Director of Forward Alliance in Taiwan, whose work has redefined societal preparedness and civic resilience. Elise Nelson, President and CEO of Vital Voices, who for more than 2 decades has empowered networks of women leaders driving democratic change worldwide. Alyssa Chu, Deputy Director of International Affairs at the DPP, whose diplomatic and political work has strengthened Taiwan's relationships across the globe. Thank you all for being here. Let's begin. When you think about the phrase connecting democracies globally, what does that look like in practical terms today? Why is this moment particularly urgent? Enoch?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vanessa. It's thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure to join the stage with such esteemed colleagues. As we embark on the 30-year anniversary of Taiwan's full democracy, you may remember 1996 was when we held our first direct presidential election. I think it's such a timely time. It's such a timely conversation to be having, because while we are a young democracy, we are in many ways on the front lines of defending these democratic values. And to your point, we are collectively facing global headwinds in protecting democracies. Whether you're sitting in the United States, sitting in Europe, or with us here in Asia, and these pressures, these headwinds, they come externally and then come internally, and I think it's when I look at civil societies around the world, NGOs doing similar work that we're doing around the world, we see so much value in exchanging notes and coming together and helping each other in addressing these common challenges. I hope in our brief conversation today we'll be able to drill down on some of the issues that we're facing, whether it's in the deepening distrust amongst citizens of their government, of public institutions, of each other, or facing these external forces that certainly have a lot of interest in breaking down our democratic institutions. Would you like me to go into what we're doing on the ground, or do you think we should hold a little bit until later on?
We could maybe take the same question and ask Elise to go next and share how she feels connecting democracies globally is relevant. And then we definitely want to drill down into Forward Alliance and the work you're doing on the ground. Yeah, thank you, Enoch. Yeah, Elise, what do you think about when you think of connecting democracies?
Well, it's interesting. I think it takes on new meaning. I'm based here in Washington, D.C., and certainly I'd say in this past year, I feel like that sentence that you said takes on a deeper resonance, certainly with me. But Vital Voices actually works with women leaders across 190 countries around the globe. For the past nearly 3 decades, we've supported almost 50,000 women leaders directly, invested in them through training, mentorship, network of their peers. And the network is critically important right now when we're talking about democracy. And one of the, I think the largest reasons why is because you look at autocratic regimes and they are deeply connected. So I think democratic forces and organizations and those that are pushing for democracy must be equally connected. What we know is that, 72% of the global population live under autocratic rule. And, I remember sort of the heyday of democracy was when Vital Voices was founded nearly 30 years ago. And you talk about Taiwan, it was, we're all in that same period where democracies were really thriving. But in the last 10 years, just in the last 10 years, we've seen a 48% increase in the growth of autocracies around the world. And for me in my work, that has a huge impact, because I would say the thing that, autocratic rulers fear the most and want to shut down the most are not just women leaders, but powerfully organized women leaders. So it's something that we are paying a lot of attention to, and certainly will, and I'm sure the years to come.
Yes, thank you. And Alyssa, how do you feel about this idea of connecting democracies globally? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, hi. So thank you, Vanessa. It's an honor to be with this talk. It's critical, very, very important for myself and for the country of ours. Of course, Ina has mentioned many things about we are the young democracy, especially facing the challenges right now that China's imminent threat is kind of encroaching Taiwan every day. And the shared value and shared interest is really the base that we engage with the world. Especially working as a party, I can take an example that we have a lot of sister party which are embracing liberalisms, and we work closely together to strengthen the ideas of protecting Taiwan's safety and security. Just earlier, a couple of weeks ago, we have this big meeting of Liberal International, which is composition of over 60 parties around the world who embrace democracy and human rights, and they passed many resolutions in supporting Taiwan to counter China's, for example, transnational repressions against Taiwanese nationals, and also resolution to support Taiwan's international participations. So this is something that we do every day to promoting these share-based diplomacies, to really ally with people embrace the same values, to really speak up for Taiwan. So in the past, we are striking for aiming for achieving the formal recognition of Taiwan, which is really limited our space, and there's a lot of constraints in Taiwan's diplomatic space. But now today, because of the sheer value, we're able to expand our friendship to Europe, to other part of the world, just because we all know that countering authoritarian regimes, that we should work together and connect democracy together, that can make us more powerful as a whole. Yeah.
Thank you. Enoch, yes, let's go back to this question of Forward Alliance and what lessons we can learn and maybe share globally.
Well, we're in a young democracy, and I lead an even younger NGO. We're about 5.5 years into our founding. But over the last 5 years, what we've been focusing on is Alyssa mentioned just now on the international outreach that we're doing and the connections we're building globally. And as an NGO, what we're doing is investing in the democracy that we hold so precious, that we're talking about today. Because democracy has to work. Democracy has to stay vibrant. Because if the democracy ceases to be relevant to our citizens, then this great experiment, has a limited future. And so, what does that mean, though? What does it mean to invest in democracy, right? I think we're all aware voting is important. That happens every couple of years, depending on your election cycle. But what we're working on is something even deeper. It's in the communities. It's getting folks reinvested, reconnected with each other. Technology is such a game changer in how we go about our lives. I mean, we're literally holding a panel in different time zones right now. That technology has also led to an increased sense of isolation, where people may not even come face to face with their delivery person, where people, for folks sitting in on the West Coast in the U.S., they might not even get in a cab that's driven by an actual person. And that world is going to be, we're going to see more and more of that. And I think the flip side of that technological development is this isolation I mentioned earlier, and and where folks don't have to engage anymore. And when you stop knowing your neighbors by their names, when you don't even bother asking how folks are, how their day has been, that starts to break down, and I think it brings, you see weaknesses surfacing in our sense of community and therefore sense of citizenship. And so seeing that trend, what we're doing is trying to bring people out of their homes, away from their devices, and getting folks to volunteer for their communities again. And most directly, it's about putting in the time to train in emergency preparedness, right? That's a very physical, concrete skill that you can pick up. But more broadly, it is about getting folks re-engaged and taking action and being activists again, and believing that I have a role to play in bettering my community. And that sense is what we're trying to bring back. I think that is what will be able to inculcate us against a lot of the threats that we're talking about externally as well. Because if we're stronger, if we're more resilient as individuals, as families, as communities, then we're certainly we're less vulnerable to these foreign influences. And so when we talk about this work, when we share this work, it's magical because you see other NGOs working on the same issues around the world, and I think that's where we could that's where we could be impactful in comparing notes and sharing programs, and that is exactly what we're doing here in Taiwan.
Thank you. That feels compatible with the question for Elise about what you've written so beautifully about in your book, which is, Vital Voices has worked with tens of thousands of women over your 3 decades, 30th anniversary coming up next year. And you illuminate a new leadership model that I think connects a lot to what Enoch was just saying about what we're missing in society and community.
Absolutely.
Can you on that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We really started to discover this about 10 years into our work, maybe 15 years into our work. And I wrote about it 13 years ago in a book that we put out. And really, I wrote the book because I felt like so many of the women that we were working with were clearly leaders, but they were leading in a really different way than those that they saw in leadership positions. So to a person, these were extraordinary women, are extraordinary women, getting up, taking on, chipping away at some of the world's greatest challenges, whether it be, violence or, economic inequities, climate issues, political injustice issues. But yet they, to a person, would say, no, I'm not a leader. I'm just someone who gets up every day and does the right thing. And when we started to call out some of these practices and give them names, that's when we began to see sort of the light switch go on. And a lot of these leaders say, oh my gosh, I guess I am a leader, because this woman is definitely a leader. And I see that trait that she uses, and I utilize that trait. And we really came across these 5 core practices. And the first one is, in my opinion, the most important. And the concept of that is really having a driving force or sense of mission. One of the things that we find with women leaders, more often than not, they rise to leadership not because they are trying to seek power for the sake of power, but really trying to seek power because they have no other choice. That is the only way that they can empower others and the issues that they care about. And so what we find again and again is that for women, leadership is very experiential. They see something in their community and they can't look away. They have to step up. They have to address that issue. We also find that women, this is the second practice, have really deep roots in their community. And what we mean by that is that they understand who they're fighting for, who they're leading. They've spent the time listening, And, really the concept of, one of the greatest strengths of any leader is their ability to listen and their ability to take those ideas forward. And really understanding that empathy is a tool and a great strength and in no way a weakness. The third piece that we found, and I feel like this is a real superpower of women, and that is connecting across lines that divide, sort of finding that little tiny sliver, that little tiny place across the polarization, where it usually starts around their kids. They want safer streets for their kids, and that's not a political issue, it's a mother's issue, right? And so they can come together around that issue. They can put ego aside, they can put identity aside, culture, religion. We're working with women right now in Palestine and Israel who are working together as mothers and saying, enough is enough, we want peace. And the fourth practice that we've seen again and again is the idea of bold ideas and bold action. That often, the sort of, the person who hasn't had the ability to sit at the decision-making tables has that innovative, crazy idea that just might bring about the breakthrough change. And it's really the idea of believing in that crazy idea and understanding that, the methods we've used in the past haven't always worked, and trying those new and innovative out of the box approaches to making changes is sometimes that very breakthrough piece. And then finally, a resolve to pay it forward. I think what we find again and again with women leaders that we invest in around the world is that they immediately say, okay, who can I share this with? Who can I bring along? Who else needs to be part of this? I don't want it to end with me. And so it often does include bringing others in. So those are the 5 core practices that we have found. I would say that, women, in my mind, the 50,000 leaders we've worked with around the world across 190 countries, different sectors and industries and cultures and socioeconomic background, they lead differently. There are these common threads in the way that they're leading, and it's different. And I think it's a difference that our world desperately needs right now.
Yes, I completely agree. And I actually feel so grateful. I feel all 3 of you are leaders and leaders in this way and understand this completely and also put it into action and practice in your work. Alyssa, do you feel that you're constantly correcting people's misunderstandings about Taiwan's democratic story? That's just a sort of a side note, but really, because we met through you being bold and brave and willing to allow us to come in and start filming Invisible Nation. Do you feel that civil society can play a big role somehow in connecting democracies globally, just even outside of government work?
Of course, of course. By the way, I'm really empowered for Alice's just statement. I'm a three kids mother, so I hope I won't feel being left out. But being in this panel, I feel already a great honor, and as a not woman leader, but as a woman political workers. So really grateful for Vanessa to. I would say that during my time working at the presidential office, is one of the most meaningful projects that I have taken on. First questions regarding the misconceptions about Taiwan. I would say that the most is that we are facing a very serious situation right now, that since we see the past couple of years that Taiwan has increased a lot of international visibility due to a lot of people's help, including the Invisible Nation as a films to promoting Taiwan. However, China has getting more and more aggressively on promoting their propaganda everywhere around the world to, of course, encroaching Taiwan's sovereignty and also to claim that Taiwan is part of China. Not only that, Taiwan's issue is internal affairs of a Chinese unfinished civil war, which this narrative is always very dangerous to Taiwan, because Taiwan itself now, we are functioning as an independent sovereign democracy. We have, as Ina has just mentioned, periodic presidential elections, free and fair elections. We have our own form of government. However, because of the distance, because of a lack of information in the global south, that people oftentimes has already taken China's narratives on Taiwan's sovereignty and falsely, kind of claim Taiwan's judiciaries as China's part of China. So which is something that we have to constantly generate this awareness. So this is why I really promoting Invisible Nations, because I think this documentary is important to generate awareness of a Taiwan situation and give the people outside of Taiwan to understand the real situation of Taiwan. So this is why I'm also appreciate that Vanessa, not just to promoting the films in the Western world or more democratic world, but also trying to go to Singapore. We had films in Bangkok, those global south with limited information, and perhaps the information space is dominated by China, to know the real story and the imminent threats on Taiwan that we need to address, and until it's too late. And sorry for the second question. This has been too long because I've been, this is something I'm really concerned. But the second question about the grassroots and NGO, which is super important. I think what Ina has been doing, not just when he was in government, but now this is really important to create this sense of community and to really empower people who care about the issue to work together. Taiwan's democratic movement has not been, possible without the grassroots efforts or civil society or NGOs help. So every time we have a big social reform, so for example, legalize the same-sex marriage, for example, to turn Taiwan a peaceful transition from, martial law to democracy, it's really a lot of people and NGO come together to make this happen. So I always really value the people from NGO and civil society to work selfless to really make the reform happen. Yeah.
That's great.
I see myself more of an activist and political workers in between. So thank you for bringing up this question.
I love it. Enoch, can you share some examples, maybe experiences you've had with cross-border collaboration and how that might be scaled and how that works? Yeah.
Sure. So, resilience is the new is the latest trend as we engage and work with organizations, civil society in Americas, in Europe, elsewhere in Asia. Folks are, I think, given what's transpired over the last couple of years internationally, folks are keenly aware of the need for communities to be able to anticipate, respond to, and recover from disasters, contingencies, man-made crises. I think folks on this call, have firsthand experience working with groups in these regions affected by war, affected by conflict, devastated by disasters. And so, as we think about, resilience is what has initially brought us together. But as we have this conversation about how to build resilience, what communities need to do, how communities can organize ahead of time, stay connected, and activate to help each other in a crisis, what I found is that increasingly we're talking about citizenship and service and volunteerism, these values and these actions that are only possible in democracies. And these forces that countries that are not yet democratic, these forces that they rely on to hopefully move towards a more free and open and liberal society. And so, our work nominally is about building resilience, but it is about strengthening democracy at its core. And so, whether it's working with NGOs in Germany, NGOs in the United States, that really is what we're talking about. And as NGOs, we don't have the power or the resources of the state, but we're able to harness the passion and the drive of individuals and citizens and moms and dads who just care about, who don't want to talk politics, but they care about the safety of their children. They care about protecting their home and helping their neighbors. And so, but we live in a day and age where there is so much competing for our attention. Right? Technology is just one, but is a very powerful force drawing us away from more connected civic life. And so how to empower, organize, and keep volunteers engaged is a common challenge. and that is something that we're working on with our partners. Hey, how are you creating a program that is engaging? How are you creating a program that gives volunteers a sense of not just a sense of accomplishment, but a sense of belonging and a sense of meaning, right? Just now we talked about, right, people want a deep sense of mission, but that really is why people are willing to give the time, take their weekends, normally their night out, and give it to their community, show up to a community center. What we're doing now is we just created a program where, when we first met Vanessa, we had been working with professional first responders from Taiwan. So that these are your full-time professional firefighters, paramedics, police officers, and getting these professional first responders to work with civilians, to train them in emergency response. One, it's great training because you have folks who do it every day, share their knowledge and their firsthand experience with civilians and volunteers. But it also connects communities in a way that programs in the past have not been able to. What I mean is, these days, not only do you not know your driver, your delivery person, most people don't even know a firefighter or a police officer or a paramedic. And to be able to bring these groups together, working towards a common goal, which is to make our communities safer, is a way to begin to rebuild this thing we call the social fabric, right? It's such a great term, and we can visualize it, but how do you do it? Well, you got to bring people together literally, and have them spend time together, working together, and laughing together. And so that was how we started. But now we've built another program where these volunteers are now stepping up because they want to do more. They don't just want to train, they want to help others train, right? They want to pay it forward. And so volunteers are now putting in the time to become community ambassadors, where then they go to community centers and then train the elderly, train whoever shows up at community centers in family safety, right? These basic concepts that we can all agree on, however you vote, however you worship. And so this community ambassador program, something that we're very proud of, and we see a lot of potential because it allows communities it allows us to do even more, and really allows volunteers to take ownership in the program. They're no longer participating in something, they're leading something. They're the ones going out and setting up these classes, going out, handing out flyers, going out and literally sharing and teaching. And so, we think, you can replace resilience or emergency response with any other program, but I think the point is getting folks engaged again, getting folks to become activists again. Because if you lose that sense of vibrancy or that sense of engagement at the civil society level, then I truly believe our democracy weakens. So just sharing how we're doing this work has been, it's a highlight of our day.
Yeah, I was so impressed when I visited the Forward Alliance offices and you showed me around, and the quality of excitement and the people who were there who were just happy to be in community, working to learn the skills of resilience and civil defense and all of it. It was really, really moving. And also inspiring and moving to attend a Vital Voices event in New York, Elise, where you really coordinate the democratic activists, the women leaders you have found and nurtured around the world. And I would love to hear more from you about how that works and what comes of these connections globally that you're building all the time. It's really amazing what Vital Voices can do.
Oh, well, thank you. I think that what probably sets us apart as an organization is that, we do run a fellowship program. Most of them are somewhere between a couple months to maybe an entire year. But what we find is that really it's after the fellowship programs when women leaders get involved in the network. We have an online community, but we do a lot of activities. We're always doing gatherings to bring our community together. We just opened up a global embassy in Washington, D.C. as another sort of home for our community to come together. do events, really learning from each other. And I think that's really where the power lies. It's harder to measure, quite frankly, than a particular program, but that's where I definitely see the. In fact, last year, you probably know, of course, I'm sure you know, that it was, the year of democracy, right? Or the year that democracy was on trial, as Nobel laureate Maria Pena, I'm sorry, no, Maria Ressa often says. And we honored her actually last year at our big Global Leadership Awards program that we do. And we decided in September, really to mark this particular year where, more than half the world's population was living in countries with national elections, really to bring together 100 women leaders who we felt like were really very much on the front lines of pushing back against autocratic regimes, pushing forward for democracy. And it was an incredible gathering. A few days, we held it in Warsaw, Poland, bringing women from all over the world, including, women who traveled for many hours from Ukraine, but from all corners of the globe. And out of that, we decided that the lessons were so rich to create an anti-authoritarian playbook. It's got 6 core practices, 6 core sort of areas of focus, but really a playbook from women leaders to women leaders. And what we've been doing since we released it this past January, we've been doing these small discussions and really sort of using it as a jumping off point to collect, further anecdotes, strategies that work. And I think the number one thing, again, I say it, that we have found from women around the world is that do not become isolated and don't take the bait in terms of don't get caught up in the chaos of being, pulled around in this way and that way. Stay focused and stay networked. Across industries, across sectors, around the world, but also across generations, and that piece is really important. What I find is that, what gives me hope in this moment as I look at, my own country and the challenges with backsliding around democracy, what gives me hope is women we work with around the world who have pushed through. Mm-hmm. I mean, both of you, incredible work that you're doing in Taiwan. I mean, just pushing so hard. I think we in the United States, need to really spend time listening and understanding and taking a page from the incredible work that you have been doing for years, for 30 years, almost 30 years. Because I think it is the only way we're gonna move through this moment. I'll just also mention a really interesting study that I read a couple of years ago, but I think it's really relevant right now. These wonderful researchers out of Harvard, Erica Chenoweth and Zoe Marks, they put out this research. You've probably seen it, Vanessa.
Actually, where I've seen it, not to interrupt you, but Jane Fonda relaunched her father's Committee for the First Amendment here to make sure that free speech stays protected, especially in our media, Hollywood film environment. And Erica Chenoweth came and spoke.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. We had Zoe Marks at our summit in Poland. And just to frame something so fascinating that she talks about in the research that she's done, they found that for a progressive democratic movement to be successful anywhere in the world, they had to have at least 25% in women in leadership positions within that movement. It was something about when women are involved at that level, they bring, their mothers, they bring their children, and all of the sudden, the movement has a much broader appeal. It looks more intergenerational. It looks more real. It's connected to everyday issues that women and their families are facing. However, on the flip side, when democratic movements where women have been critically involved fail, the backlash, the violence against women is more severe and it's heavily sexualized. So, for example, if you look at Iran, and you look at I mean, obviously women were the spark and the movement to the democratic uprising over the last couple of years. But, you look at what the regime has done, shooting bullets at, women's breasts, face, genitals, really sexualizing. And obviously with the Masa Amini and her death over, the hair strand hanging out. But we also see that in Sudan as well. Women working on the front lines in these emergency response rooms, women critical to, the pushback, against authoritarian regimes in 2018. And then what do you see? You see mass violence, mass rapes against women. So, you really can't disentangle the advancement of women and the advancement of democracy.
Yes.
The two of them just go hand in hand.
I'm so happy that you speak that so articulately, so eloquently. It is so important, and it's something that people around the world don't speak about enough or understand fully enough. So thank you. Yeah. Alyssa, actually, Elise made some interesting points that are kind of relevant to this question about whether there might be structural changes that might help democracies connect globally more easily, especially in Taiwan's case. The last thing you want to do is be isolated or marginalized. Staying networked, staying focused, as Elise said, is so key. In all of your different professional experiences, which are vast, are you bringing any of that knowledge of diplomacy or civil society to your current role and thinking about this? Are there ways to have democracies connect better?
Yeah, I think what Enoch and Alice is doing is really wonderful and a good example for everybody to follow. I think the woman, really to connecting the women all together, who activists or who fight for democracy together. I believe that I wish I was at the Warsaw meetings, that I can learn about the strategies that you have come out to work together. I think a good playbook for democracy is important. If the other side is sharing their toolkits, then I think we as Taiwan, we have a lot to share as well. For many years to now, like I think we are many, for perhaps decades ago, we are still a recipients of aid and also seeking for support. But now I think Taiwan is a force of good to the world. Taiwan is willing to contribute our expertise in terms of, for example, civic tech community. We have very strong digital resilience since we are facing the cyber attacks every day on the front line. And we have a great community who can combat, China's hybrid. We are working hard, but this hybrid warfare is in many forms. However, I think we have a very strong NGOs and grassroots community work together to counter this disinformation campaign, and also, all the malign influence operations on China trying to work on Taiwan. And as I think Ina mentioned about this community building as well. I think the more that Taiwanese people are willing to work in a unity together to safeguard democracy, then we can be an example for a lot of emerging democracy in the region or around the globe, in Africa, in Latin America. I think Taiwan now, we have not just a strong civil society, we also have a lot of experience to share and counter the gray zone tactics that is imposed on Taiwan every day. So we are willing to really work with the democracy or emerging democracies to share our experience in countering such threats. And also, other thing I think is very important for everybody to work together is to build this economic partnership. Now the government and our civil society also pushing forward for strengthening our security by push forward the non-red supply chains. Since we know that Ina has mentioned that technology, Taiwan has already been seen as an advanced technology hub, and so we are very proud of our semiconductor advanced semiconductor industry. So this is why we can really work together with all the democracy around the world that to strengthen the economic security, not to be, coerced by China all the time whenever their political agenda is not satisfied. So I think there are a lot of channels that to countering hybrid threats, to strengthen the economic partnership and security partnership, that we can share a lot of information together. And we always experience. I hope that as Vanessa mentioned, Taiwan has been marginalized and isolated internationally. So to engaging with activists around the world, to engage with democracy fighters around the world is very important for Taiwan. And we are very proud to say that we champion the human rights in the region. And we hope that we can also bring our experience to our global partners and to promoting all the progressive value that we embrace deeply.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. So hopefully, films and we can find other different kind of approaches to work together and to really know our ideals.
Thank you. This has been such a great conversation. I want to jump right to our concluding questions and allow each of you to speak for a couple minutes about if there was some new democratic tool for uniting democracies globally, a kind of initiative or alliance or tool, what would you dream of having, and maybe give us something hopeful so we can end on a hopeful note. Enoch, please.
I'll leave the policy vision to Alyssa. I want to talk about what. Thank you for this opportunity. There are two things that come to mind I wanted to share. One is so technical and so minor, but it's so important. And then what am I talking about? So in our work in building civil defense and civil protection capacity, we realized that in a crisis, we need to be able, especially in a crisis, we need to be able to work in a decentralized manner. We can't rely on critical infrastructure. We need to have a way to communicate, right? And when I say these words, I hope everyone, you can hear that I'm talking about emergency response, but really there's a parallel to democratic movements as well. And because of this need, we've been spent the better part of the last year and a half building out a set of tech toolkits to enable communities to stay connected in a decentralized manner, based on a mesh network, for example, and building out software that can run on decentralized mesh networks where people can exchange information to stay coordinated, because emergency response requires us to be coordinated and requires us to act quickly after impact. But these are the same toolkits that I think civil societies and activists around the world could leverage to do their very important work on the ground, especially in societies that are not as free, not as open, with more restrictions on the tech side. And so one of the things I wanted to share was, we're so excited about this tool because it makes our community safer, but it's also something that we can help and share with partners around the world. Once we've built it, once we've refined it, it doesn't cost anything, right? It's not an IP, it's a know-how. And so we're very excited to bring these toolkits online and share with our partners, because we know, one, it'll help make communities safer, but two, it'll help connect the communities and hopefully allow these great activists on the ground to do their work on sunny or rainy days. So that's what I meant about so technical. Seems such a small thing, but I think it's so important and so powerful. The second thing I wanted to share a little bit is this. We've been talking about strengthening democracies, and against what, right? The question is, what are we strengthening democracies against? And of course, as we know, usually the coercion and threats come from autocratic states, right? And until we solve that root problem, we're always going to be fighting to protect our democracy. We're always going to be pushing back against this tide of oppression. and coercion. And so, at some point we have to also embrace not just the mission of strengthening our democracies within our borders, but reaching out and helping autocratic societies change. Taiwan 30 years ago was that, right? And we were able to democratize because our activists felt empowered, because our activists had support around the world, because internationally we believed that democratic values are universal and is worth it's and so as I think about where Taiwan sits right now, our biggest threat comes from obviously the Beijing government on the other side of the strait. I hope that we're able to give the activists and intellectuals and community leaders more support than we've been able to. One, because it's in Taiwan's interest to see a more liberal, a more free, a more open Chinese society. But two, beyond our self-interest, it is the right thing to do. If we didn't have the friends, the international support, the camaraderie, the solidarity 30, 40, 50 years ago, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I think it's if going back, and I'm going to steal another line from Elise, if we believe in paying it forward, if we still have that same sense of mission, then that should be a top priority, and we need to embrace, if I may say so, brothers and sisters in China to help them get to where we are.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said this, Enoch, because actually the longer title of this panel is Connecting Democracies and People Fighting for Democracies Globally. It doesn't matter what country you're in. Obviously, there are these universal values and ideals, and people fight for them wherever they are. And it is so important not to leave people behind, especially when they're stuck in an autocratic country. And it's horrific, the oppression. Yeah. Hopeful note from you, Elise. Do you have any new?
I do have a hopeful note, but it starts with maybe something not so hopeful.
Okay.
Often that's where you find the hope, right?
Yeah.
As you know well, I mean, this year has been extremely difficult. The loss of U.S. government funding in this sector, but then I think just the signal that has sent, that potentially, issues of development, democracy, women's rights and opportunities are not as important, sort of sending that signal out globally. 47% of women's organizations, particularly those in crisis zones, are predicted to go out of business by the end of the year. And I think about, wow, what will happen with half of the leaders who are holding that line for rights and opportunities for women and girls just simply disappear. And I was saying this earlier in the year to a woman leader we support and political leader we support, who's part of our network from Kosovo. I shouldn't even say we support, she's part of our network. And, and she said, and she actually sent me a text saying this. She said, I understand right now you feel buried, and we have all been there. We have all been buried. But maybe, just maybe, you've actually been planted. And if you are to regrow again, what would you be? Because this is a moment for regrowth like never before, and you have to take advantage of it. And I've taken that to heart, and we've, really gone back to our roots and said, wait, what was the reason for us? Why were we founded in the first place? On the heels of the UN Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, China. But, why were we founded in the first place? We were founded to really stand behind these heroic women who are truly on the front lines of change, taking on our world's greatest challenges. And I think it really gave me, I think, the permission to stop thinking about what we've lost and start thinking about what we will gain through reinvention.
I love that. Yep. That is so, so beautiful. And I have to give all of you praise, and Alyssa, the final word. You are a world leader. You are a woman leader on the front lines of change, and you really have done so much good work too. Please share anything hopeful you can think of that would inspire our.
Yeah, I think a lot of things, good things. Actually, what Alice done is what I've been thinking for a long time, because I feel like the woman leadership and the women who fight for democracy or mothers should really connected to each others. So I had honor to travel to several summits or international conference. I met a lot of liberals who are fighting against their own government. So I see what Ina said, what we were 30 years ago. And every time when they hear the story about Taiwan, they were shocked because they were their first time to hear our narrative. So this is why I really do think there's a space that we can work hard on to to make sure the message across. A small example, like Costa Rica used to be our diplomatic ally, but they ceased a relationship because of China. However, our friends from the Liberal Party just messaged me saying that they are in the middle of a big campaign, presidential campaign. They actually wrote in their platform saying that they want to resume the relationship with Taiwan. However, China have a big statements on, this is internal affairs of China and we are not allowed. But this is the voice of justice. This can happen everywhere if we can get our message across. If we can get invisible nations to play in Latin America, to play in Africa. There's one conference I attended, the African friend was shocked when they hear about Taiwan is not part of China. They say, oh, China tell us that they allow democracy because Taiwan is democracy. They think Taiwan is part of China. So those fake stories, false narratives are circulating everywhere that we cannot stop. So this is what we have to work very hard, have this global alliance to connect all the democracies voiced out of Taiwan so that it won't be too late, so that China won't take their political agenda a step forward, so that Ina's work can be, worthwhile to secure that island and to prepare for contingency, but without really to let the contingency happen. So I think this is really important for all our works. Work with the women leaders around the world, building the community on the ground, and to promote the films that can really tell Taiwan's story. All of these are important.
Yes. Yes, thank you. And just so we're all clear, Enoch is a wonderful leader, and men who actually listen to women and work with us and care are rare and special and need to be elevated and promoted. And we wish you all success in all your future leadership roles, because you are a natural leader and a good one, and one who will clearly promote democracy and peace and equality for everyone. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for this very powerful, deeply insightful conversation. And what we've heard reinforces something at the heart of the film Invisible Nation, that democracy is not a static achievement. It is a living practice, and it survives when people are willing to stand up, to collaborate, and to imagine a freer future together. Taiwan's story is not isolated. It's part of a global story about transparency, accountability, and solidarity. And we felt that solidarity today in so many ways that was so meaningful. The work each of you is doing, whether it's through civic preparedness, international engagement, or leadership development, shows what it means to build democratic alliances from the ground up. To our audience, thank you for being part of this global community. We invite you to continue the discussion, share the film, support organizations, Vital Voices, Forward Alliance, everything you can think of that's supporting democracy and doing this work every day. And of course, my heartfelt thanks to Enoch, Elise, Alyssa, for sharing your experience, your expertise, and your vision for what democracies can build together. Thanks again for joining us, everyone, and we hope to see you at future events.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.